right. Well, thankful to be back home for a long homestand here, the next 4. And, got the split on the road last week and, felt like we, put together a really good effort at Troy and was, really proud of our guys to go in a tough road environment against a really good team and execute our game plan and find that consistency that we had really been searching for throughout the year. And then, obviously, guys stepping up in J-Mac's absence when he went down with the injury, and we play, the lion's share of that game without him and find a way, to win, which was really important for us. And then, fast forward going to Southern Miss and without him and a couple other guys, I think just our lack of depth kind of wore on us. And but I was proud of our effort, the way that we fought. I think some of our fatigue kind of showed in our shooting numbers, finishing, free throw percentage. And, just kind of got into our numbers and our depth that kind of, caught up to us on a 2-game road swing. But hopefully get some guys healthy, excited to be back home, have the students here, and, build some momentum here in the arena.
I guess I'll start off if you have any updates on the guys who missed that Southern Miss game and, when they might be back and available for you.
I would expect us to have quite a few more guys back. We'll see today. I think we had a productive couple days of treatment and rehab, with our training staff, and they did a nice job. Got an update yesterday and another one this morning that was really positive. So we'll see once we get to the court here today how much those guys can give us. But I'm optimistic that a lot of the guys that did not get to play on Saturday have given themselves a chance over the next 48 hours to be able to play on Wednesday.
Ike in particular has, had extremely limited minutes this year when he's been able to get out there, though. Like, he's been a little bit of a difference maker, maybe not huge stats, but, I mean, you can tell things that he does well. Like, do you think he's going to be somebody who contributes more, will be healthy enough to contribute down the stretch here?
I sure hope so. That's been a real challenge, for our team, through 23 games is – his availability because, Ike's a terrific player and it may not show up on these stat sheets but certainly to our staff and what he does is he impacts winning for us. He gives you a little more size. He's got great versatility. He could play at a couple different positions for us, which is important in terms of your rotation and how you fit different pieces together. He finds himself in great position all the time. I think that's what a veteran player does, and conceptually he really understands and knows what we're trying to do defensively and doesn't put himself in a lot of situations that would expose his athleticism or anything like that. And so we do miss him when he's out there, and not just the impact that he brings, but the impact that it has on other guys and their minutes and their rotations and the positions that they're able to play. And that has been a real challenge for us because as you look at it, Ike has played in, 6 games, right? 6 of your 23 games. I don't think he played for the first 14, and he practiced for 5 months as one of our, first and top 6 guys. And so that's been a challenge from day one when this season began. So we're hopeful. It's kind of day to day with him and what he's battling through, but hopefully we can get him consistently healthy because he does make a difference when he's out there.
And obviously you don't get too far ahead and you take it one game at a time for speaking cliches, but so much turnover. Do you guys kind of like know even what the Sun Belt bracket looks like and just how much difference winning games here down the stretch could mean as far as like whether you have to win 6 or 3 games to win a conference?
Honestly, I really don't, and I wish I had a better answer for you. You kind of know that my answer to that. I've not looked one time at the standings, to be honest with you. I have not, I rarely get on the ESPN app. I'm so locked into our team and, our opponents and things like that. I honestly am not. I couldn't tell you where we're at in the standings. Doesn't matter at this point to me because it's not going to make our preparation or our process any different. I know we have 8 games left. I'm thankful that 7 of those are conference games, and I know that's a bulk of a conference season that can flip the standings upside down in a hurry. But it's not if you're going to be focused on the standings. You have to be focused on your team. You have to learn from the last game. Get guys healthy, make adjustments, and make the most of each and every day that you have. And so you just keeping up with some of the scores and things, vaguely. It's wide open, right? I have no idea again where the standings are, where we sit in those standings, but I do see some of the scores, and obviously we've almost played everybody to this point, and I have an idea of what the league kind of looks like, and it is wide open. But this year is such a league of matchups. It really truly is, and people will scratch their head and they'll say, how do you guys, lose to this team, and then you go on the road and you beat Troy? Well, it's all matchups, and your record, your scores, your non-conference schedule, it doesn't have anything to do with your matchups. It's the 5 players that are on the court, and it's one style of play versus another. Does one team's style of play dictate and take away the key players on the other team, or do they match up well with each other? And I think that's more important in this league this year than what it was last season. And it's not a knock on our league by any means. I was talking to a couple coaches on the road this past week, and they said, "Man, there's just so much parity in the league. It's wide open." I said, "Yeah, because you don't have this incredible top-end talent in our league anymore, unfortunately." As you look at our league last year, I'll give an example. Mark Freeman, okay, for us, for whatever reason, Coastal Carolina, the way they played, gave us trouble last year. We were not a great matchup. We had 2 just really tough battles, but we had the best player on the court, and they play drop coverage, and they force you to shoot mid-range pull-up twos, and we had the best mid-range pull-up two shooter in the country on our team. So we had top-end talent that could go win that game for you. As I look across the league this year, I don't know that there's a whole bunch of that. And that's not a knock. It's probably the way the majority of mid-major leagues are. So the matchups become that much more important, and it makes people like yourself scratch your head and say, wow, why does Troy lose by 20 to App State when they were just doing this to another team? It's all about matchups. It is 100% about matchups, and each game is different. And how you match up against another team, how they play, is going to dictate how that comes out. And so it becomes a game of adjustments. And there's a lot of factors that go into the adjustments. Obviously our schedules have been flipped upside down with the weather. Every time I turn around, I feel like Louisiana Monroe's playing a game and in somebody else's gym. God bless them, and that's not easy. And so you're adjusting, right? We played with 6 players the other day. Those are adjustments at this time of year, and so you're going to see that come down the pipe over these next 7 conference games. What that means for us and where we are right now versus where we could end, couldn't tell you because I don't look at it. But we're going to take care of business and be the best that we could be matching up and give our guys the best chance to match up against each and every team.
It's now been 5 games since there was a little bit of change in the starting lineup. Throughout in that stretch, defensively, the metrics have spiked a lot, allowing barely 30% from beyond the arc against some of the top 3-point shooting teams. What have you seen on a defensive standpoint from your team that's maybe been able to make those adjustments and have those kind of results?
Yeah, I think, Coach Burke in our program says all the time, it's one of my favorite Burkeisms that he brings out, is he said, we got to do simple better. And he says it in a Mississippi voice. And that's a great way to put it. Sometimes you got to do simple better. And I think we've simplified over the last 3-4 weeks some of the things that we've been doing with our guys, whether it's, maybe we traditionally or we haven't always switched this action. Maybe we will switch it now and really kind of just finding commonalities. So that we can just be in good position. I think that's the biggest thing, keeping guys in front. I think our rebounding numbers have been better. I think obviously our 3-point numbers have been better. We've done a nice job cutting down in other teams' transition, and obviously our offense has a lot to do with that. But yeah, do simple better. I think that's that's how I would describe it. Now, I wouldn't say there's been a magic wand that we've waved. It's just we're doing simple things a little bit better and more consistently than we were prior to that point.
And then just in that stretch, I know 2 and 3, I know the numbers are better in that. Do you think that record's maybe reflective on how much this team has maybe turned that corner as of late, being able to find that consistency?
Yeah, without question. I even told our guys that. I said, hey, it's cliche. I know I got a bunch of them, but you don't always judge the final performance by the performance by the final score. And we are really gaining on that, as you mentioned, with those defensive numbers and taking care of the ball and sharing the ball and all those things. And it hadn't quite come out to equate to wins, but.
Just kind of building off some of that big picture stuff, and comparing to men's and women's, where they're sixth in net and the men are 20th, and you talked about the top end talent, and they've been able to retain that on the women's side. Obviously, it's not apples to apples, but when you talk about something like the MAC Challenge, from a league level, would it make more sense to, rather than focus on getting games like that, to figure out ways to maybe generate more revenue or things that would help with talent retention, rather than trying to find games where maybe this will bump our net a couple spots?
Yeah, I think so, because those opportunities to play Power 5 schools, they dwindle, right? And so just like we talked about playing on opening night, however many Power 5 schools there are, 80 to 90 of them, they all want to play a bye game. They all want to buy an opponent and play at home on opening night. And we say to ourselves, we're not going to be available for that. It's hard. It's hard, when you're at James Madison or you're any of these schools in the Sun Belt or the MAC, to get those games in general. So when you cut out, probably 20% of the opportunities to play those games, it really limits you. And when you are trying to put together a budget that can build a great roster, that is a factor, absolutely. And it oftentimes is a more important factor than maybe trying to move the needle in terms of our net, to boost it by 15 points or whatever that may be, because what is the difference in moving our net? I just hate to say it, but I don't think it's going to get us 2 teams in. It's just unfortunate, but that's where it's at. And maybe we're talking about the difference in a 13 seed or a 14 seed, something like that. But in the grand scheme of things, I think having a better player would help you move the needle in that. So a lot of portal talk in February. I look back against Marshall at their place. I thought we played a great game. That was one of our better games that we played all year, and you may not understand it because we didn't win it, but there was so many things that we did well in that game that we had failed to do consistently throughout the season. And so if we could bottle that up and replicate those things, then we're going to like the results that we get. And so I do think we're moving the needle in the right direction in a lot of those things, a lot of those areas. And so, especially defensively, finding ways to get stops consistently against different teams is going to be a key coming down the stretch.
To stick with defense, you've forced the least amount of turnovers of any team in the Sun Belt. Is that concerning, or is that just who you are this year, where you're just not going to force as many turnovers as you have in the past? Yeah,
it's just not who we are. I don't think that our athleticism, to be honest with you, is going to allow us to be a high turnover rate team. We're going to be a field goal percentage team, and hopefully try to. We're going to rely on a lot of schemes with this team. We just have to, right, to overcome some of the lack of athleticism and things that maybe we've got in a couple areas. So we've got to be very good positionally and with our communication and understanding where we're trying to take away our opponent. So when you do that, you don't really gamble a whole lot. You've probably heard me say it, Dave, like, we are not a gamble team. We won't do it. Every time that we've tried to gamble for a steal or get ourselves out of position, it has not served us very well. And so that's not something that we want to build off of. We want to just be as solid as we can, and give ourselves an opportunity to could force low percentage shots, hopefully contest and rebound those, and then see if we can turn those into points going the other way. That's the best recipe for this team. So every team's different. Had our makeup of our team be a little bit different, then maybe we would be a little concerned if our turnover numbers forced were down. But with this team, I don't think that's going to be a huge key to us winning.
What do you see out of Louisiana? Obviously some struggles early with Coach White, but they're playing their best basketball right now. What do you see out of them?
They are. They're playing with great confidence. I think they're starting to play a little bit faster. I think per the analytics, they're one of the slowest playing teams in the country, but I do think they found some success last week against both Georgia teams by kind of, ramping up their tempo just a little bit, and even with their, scoring off of their defense, a little bit of a three-quarter court press and, collapsing on some drives and playing handsy. I think they're starting to figure out their ball screen coverage, which is, similar to what Houston does, rightfully so, and has some layers to it, and is difficult to kind of get accomplished in 1 year, but I think a little over halfway through Quantis's first year, they're gaining on finding success with that. And momentum's a heck of a thing, and I think they got 2 good wins last week against 2 good teams, and I think they're starting to find some confidence and some stride. And they're a dangerous team. They absolutely are, and for them to be able to kind of turn it around, specifically, building off of the lackluster non-conference that they had, says a lot about him and his staff.
We talked to Coach O about this and have asked you about this as well, but the MAC Sun Belt Challenge, obviously the second game is coming up. Now, in your second year of having this challenge, do you like the MAC Sunbelt Challenge? Would you like to change not having a game in February? What are your kind of thoughts on all that?
I like the challenge. I don't like the circumstances of it, just to be honest with you. I understand them. I think that when the idea was presented, whatever it was 3 years ago, to try to put a non-conference game and match people up in terms of your net, to try to increase the net, was a fine idea. I don't know that it's worked. I don't know that it has had the effect that we wanted it to. And so as you look at it, you got to say, okay, what other issues does it present? How meaningful is a non-conference game in February to both fan bases and to both teams in relation to what we're talking about with conference standings? And I think when you're comparing men's and women's basketball, it's two different things right now. It really, truly is. As you look at the Sun Belt and women's basketball, I think Coach O and I were talking there maybe sixth in the country. I don't know where we're at, but I know we're not sixth. And so it's just two totally different things, right? There's not a scenario where Virginia Tech's going to come play here at the AUBC in men's basketball. There's not a scenario where Notre Dame's going to do those things. And so we're talking about two very different things right now. And so I'm all for the MAC Challenge because I think scheduling games at this level is extremely difficult. Just the parameters of it, they have to line up. They have to make sense. Maybe they do for women's basketball. I think we got to take a better look at it after this season, and I think all of the coaches in the Sun Belt would echo that, and we've all said that. And hopefully it doesn't fall on deaf ears, and we can kind of change that. The fact that we play the first MAC Challenge game on opening night, kind of concerning because every team in the country plays on that night. And I think we kind of get swept under the rug, and it doesn't give really good mid-major basketball in two quality leagues quite the spotlight that we'd like for it to because we're playing on the first night. And then there's other layers to that, right? There's football that comes into play. There's TV. They play it on a different football schedule than what we do in the Sun Belt. So there's layers to it. I get that. But I think we need to take a look at it and maybe tweak some things. But I'm definitely not against it. Coach Kowalczyk and I have become good buddies over the last year, and we've had just so much respect for him, and an unbelievable dude. And we text all the time, and he's already played a couple Sun Belt teams this year, and so we've spoken early in the season. And I know he's excited to come here. I was excited to go there and play against him last year. It was an awesome game. We just fell a little bit short. I'd expect it to be the same thing this year, even though I really don't know anything about his team other than I can tell you they're going to be very well coached.
As you put teams together, and this is when you were at Moorhead and coaching in that league, and you saw what that league was about and what personnel were there. Things are moving so dramatically with personnel from team to team. You've already mentioned it. And then you end up with these matchups that are sort of like a roll of the dice. How is this impacting what you're doing in your recruiting as you build teams now? Do you even look at what the rest of the league is doing, or are you just let's get what we can get and go from there?
That's a great question. Yes. I would tell you, we've had a lot of conversations as a staff about, what does our roster makeup look like moving forward, and you have to adapt. I would tell you that looking back, going back to, as you said, building teams, via the portal, even though it was a little different back then. When we were at Moorhead, we looked at it and we said, okay, we need to beat Murray and Belmont, okay, and we're never going to have the retention that a private school like Belmont has. And it's going to be really difficult for us to get the top-end talent that Murray has each and every year. How can we recruit, develop, and play a way that is different to negate both of those teams? We found a way to do that, and we changed our approach. We got a mixture of high school recruiting and transfer recruiting. The way that we played was not just to go head-to-head against both of those teams, because if you tried to play Belmont basketball against them, they'd beat your brains in. If you tried to play Murray State basketball against those old, tough Murray teams, they'd beat your brains in. So we had to find different ways to do that, and we found great success in doing that. And so, 1.5 years through the Sun Belt, it's been a great learning experience because it's a very different league. And changing our approach to the portal, which is now changing your approach to how you build your roster, is very much on our radar and a topic of conversation as we go through this, because you have to give yourself the best chance to beat some of these teams that they just play differently, right? You could have the greatest center in college basketball. When you play against South Alabama's zone, he's going to be a non-factor, right? You can have the greatest center in college basketball. When you play against Troy, they're absolutely going to blitz the post every time he even thinks about touching the ball. So you got to change your approach a little bit. And we've found different ways to win. We've won with great post players. We've won without any. And so changing our approach is absolutely on the horizon. And even our approach to the portal, not to get too far ahead, but, we want to retain guys. There's no secret in that, right? You look at Troy. I mean, they play 7 guys, none of which came from the portal. They have their entire team back from last year, and last year's team was all returners. So how do you do that? That's a great question. It's a challenge, and it's something that everybody in the country is trying to figure out. And then how do you fill in around those guys? I like where we're at in the high school recruiting standpoint. We don't want to lose that. We're excited about the kids that we're on and the ones we have secured to come in here from a high school standpoint, and think that they're going to, really help us build. But we will change our approach in terms of the portal. I would tell you I was a little stubborn last year. I really felt like going through the portal that relationships and our success as a staff and everything that we have to offer here at JMU would still rank higher than the factors that bought us out last year. They didn't. And I was stubborn with that, just to be honest with you. So my approach has to change, and it will. But I won't settle, and I won't compromise moving forward. But my approach to it will change a little bit.